Titans of horror collide. Vincent Price versus Boris Karloff in a battle of sorcery from the 1963 film The Raven. With the passing of legendary filmmaker Roger Corman, we wanted to take a look at one of his movies, so join us for a bit of gothic fun on Screams After Midnight. Welcome everyone to Screams After Midnight. I am Peter, and joining me, as always, is Tim.
So excited, doing one of my favorite movies today. Yeah, as a kid growing up in the 90s, this was a big movie for me, one of the first comic book movies I've ever seen. I just love the soundtrack, the constant rain. It's a little tragic, with what happened with Brandon Lee and everything, but man, this is still such a big one for me. I'm glad we're finally getting to it.
Just so weird is I didn't get what the joke was until you said rain, and that's what made it click. So for those of you who didn't get that, Tim was confusing The Crow with the movie we're actually going to talk about today, which is The Raven.
Oh, The Raven. That's... I knew I mixed something up.
This is a horror movie podcast. We get together and talk about a horror film. It's really quite that simple. Our episode today is based on a Patreon vote. Because Roger Corman passed away recently, we decided to have a vote of 3 of his directed films, and the winner was 1963's The Raven. So that is what we're going to talk about. We'll start spoiler free as we always do. We'll give you a warning before we do get into the spoilers. And of course, if you are enjoying the show, I'll just take this minute to remind you that you can hit the like button to help us out, and that'll help support the show. And you can also support us even more over at Patreon, where you can get a bonus episode every month to Streams After Midnight, as well as some other goodies as well. So I'll tell you more about them at the end of the show. But yes, The Raven is one of the Edgar Allan Poe movies. Now, obviously, The Raven itself, that this is supposedly based on, is just a poem. So they've embellished a bit, I think. Based on, I don't know if I got the impression from the poem that there was like dueling sorcerers. But hey, we'll get into all that and talk about it. Actually, I'm glad this one, because Jack Nicholson's in this movie, and it actually helps illustrate one of the key things everyone was saying when Roger Corman passed away, is that how many notable actors and directors started in the industry working on Roger Corman productions in the 60s and 70s. And Jack Nicholson goes out to be a huge star. Everyone knows who Jack Nicholson is. And he's here, he's like 23 or something like that. I don't know what age he is, but he looks young.
I honestly didn't recognize him. It wasn't until like after the movie I realized, like, oh, holy shit, that was Jack Nicholson.
No, I did recognize him, and I think it's mainly his voice. Like, you could hear his voice if you it's not as hoarse as it becomes later on, but you can hear that kind of, I don't know, sly twang that he's got in there. But yeah, so that's a good example of that, because James Cameron got started working for Corman. I want to say Scorsese did. I know Ron Howard did, and these are just a few off the top of my head. If you Google this, there is a big list of names that we wouldn't have in the movie industry if it wasn't for Roger Corman. So yeah, respect where it's due.
Yeah, I feel like when he passed away, there's so many people that was coming out and praising him, and it's funny because he was known for like doing things like very fast and very cheap, but you see like the caliber of like the people that he's worked with and that have gone on to do bigger, better things. It's like you don't really think of like Jack Nicholson or Martin Scorsese or something as being like a fast, cheap person, but and not trying to belittle him or anything. I think that there's still like a lot of stuff that's very impressive about the movies, but that was kind of like the reputation whenever someone would talk about like a Corman flick or something.
Yeah, I think that was probably always the case, and I think what made it worse as time went on is that the standard for movies and their budgets kept going up. So I think in the 60s and 70s, the Roger Corman productions, they feel a bit cheaper, but they don't feel like that much of a difference between similar, at least movies of a similar genre anyway. But once you get to the late 80s, when Hollywood's booming with all kinds of things, and Corman's putting out like Ice Pirates, or I don't even know if he did Ice Pirates or produced that, but it's that type of thing that may have came from the Corman side of the world. and all of a sudden his movies weren't in the same kind of league as they once were. I suspect that's part of what happened there. In the same way that you used to get decent direct-to-video movies in the late 80s, early 90s, but then by the time you get to the 2000s, you know, just compare Trancers 1 with Trancers 6 and just see the quality fall off a cliff. So yeah, it's interesting to go back and do a Corman film again. We did actually follow the House Usher, like I don't know, 4 years ago at this point. It's been a while. So, and we sort of did that. I think that was a vote. I think that was a Vincent Price vote, and we're back here. And it just it just so happens that a lot of his directed movies were with Vincent Price in this era. So we're back with a Vincent Price movie.
I think he even reused some footage from Fall of the House of Usher. I think I saw, like, I don't know if it's true, but like on Wikipedia or something, I think they said that some of the scenes, like towards the end of, you know, some of like the, you know, carnage and stuff that's going around, I think they said was reused from that.
Interesting.
So it's kind of funny.
Yeah. Well, it couldn't have been off Price because Price didn't have his mustache in that movie. But yeah, if it's just like the building,
I think it was just more like some of the like castle stuff, not like stuff with the actors.
Yeah, that's fair enough. It's actually kind of a stacked cast in a lot of ways because we got Vincent Price in here. We got Jack Nicholson, like we said, young Jack Nicholson. We got Peter Lorre, and we also have another horror legend. We got Boris Karloff, the Frankenstein monster himself, is here. And it's so funny. At one point in this movie, he refers to Vincent Price as if he's a younger man, and I guess he technically is. But I always think of Vincent Price being an old dude, so it's just really funny.
Right.
You know, this guy from the early Universal movies. Although to be fair, Vincent Price is in the second Invisible Man movie as a young man.
Oh, really?
So it's not even like he wasn't around in that time. He was just a bit younger. But no, it's just funny to see because hey. But yeah, so a bit of a stacked cast, and then there's the two ladies. I feel bad for not mentioning them, but I don't know who they are. I've never heard of Hazel Court or Olive Sturgis, but they're here too, and that's all the cast basically, although in some small parts. So, but yeah, and the premise of this movie though is that Vincent Price is a sorcerer of some kind, and at the start of the film, a raven shows up, starts talking, says, "Hey, I've been turned into a raven. Help me." Turn back into a person. And he's like, okay, I guess. And that leads us down a path where it kind of becomes about him investigating this other sorcerer who might be evil. And I'll leave it there for spoilers' sake, but that's like what the movie is. And I'd forgotten. I'd seen this a long time ago. I had forgotten that this had anything to do with like wizards. Like this was this movie started, and Vincent Price is like drawing like a raven with his like magic finger, and there's like just cartoon raven appearing on the screen. I was like, oh, this is what we're doing with this movie. Okay.
Yeah, so I was a little nervous going in because I was watching this on Prime, and like and this is one of those ones that's like available in like 7 different streaming services.
Sure.
And like, so when I brought it up under the genre, they had it listed as comedy, fantasy, and I was kind of like, oh no, like wait a minute, I mean, I thought we were supposed to be doing a horror movie.
It is definitely a comedy as well, though. It's definitely a horror comedy for sure.
But so, and I'm not saying that. I'm not tipping my hat as to whether I, liked it or disliked it or whatever. But going in, I was just kind of nervous because I was like, oh, wait, are we not doing the horror thing? But then as I started watching, I was like, oh, this is actually, I think the opening is actually like, quite beautiful. They have like, just some nice like scenic shots and like some like, like waves and stuff going on the beach. And then, like you said, you've seen him drawing the raven. I was like, oh, actually, I'm kind of liking the mood setting. And then they have like Vincent Price basically start reciting the poem and everything, and I started getting confused. I was like, wait, how is this like a comedy? But then, like you said, like pretty early on, when the raven shows up and starts talking, and then it's just like instantly like, oh, okay, I see now, like what kind of flick this is. And I forget like his first line, but it is like kind of like a jokey, sarcastic, like, hey, what do you think you're doing? Like kind of thing. That's not even exactly like how he sounds like, but he is like a little bit of a,
Peter Lorre does definitely not have a thick American accent. He's got a German accent, I think. I don't know. I
maybe.
Yeah. He's definitely played foreign villains in other movies, because that's definitely what I know him from mainly. But Yeah. It's definitely a lighter film. It's definitely veering more towards kind of like dark comedy in a lot of ways, versus even just other like Vincent Price and Roger Corman movies. But it does have some horror like stuff to it. There's some of the stuff that the characters do is a bit spooky. There's a lot of like riding through thunder and lightning, spooky castles. There's sort of like a madman sorcerer's laboratory kind of stuff with cobwebs. There's definitely a lot of horror visuals in this.
It's like a general gothic atmosphere to it, which
yeah, for sure. So yeah, but hey, that's the basic premise. So we'll get to the question that we always start with, and that is, Tim, what did you think of The Raven?
So I actually liked it quite a bit. I thought it was pretty fun. And I mean, maybe it was just kind of the unexpectedness of it. And yeah, I was a little thrown off by the comedy at first, but then I kind of quickly settled into that tone. And it's it's a very short movie. It's only like 80 something minutes, so I thought it moves along pretty fast, and you have like a lot of good actors in it. So I don't have any issues with seeing them on the screen, and I just really like does
that imply that when you're watching a lot of movies, sometimes you sit there and go, nope, don't like them on my screen, I'm not happy about this?
I've definitely, the older I get, the less patience I have with like movies if I'm not feeling them. So like I mean, if I'm watching something for the show, I'll watch it or whatever. But yeah, if something's on my screen and I am vibing with it, I'm pretty quick to click it off.
Fair enough. You may continue with your general thoughts.
But yeah, no, I do think the movie actually looks quite good, and I just generally like this kind of gothic presentation. I like the these old Victorian castles, and like you're saying, like the laboratories, and it does get silly and goofy, and like there's some like like special effects and stuff at the end that are like obviously pretty dodgy by today's standards, but I think there's like a charm to watching them in this old movie.
Yes, I would describe the visual effects towards the end as some of it is just literally, I would like, it feels even an insult to say cartoons, because cartoons implies more detail. There's literally points in this where it's like someone opened Microsoft Paint, had like a blue circle, and just moves it around the screen with a mouse, and that's all it is. And don't get me wrong, I realize that in 1963 doing that took a lot of effort, but it's the sort of thing where today you'd like rip into a YouTuber for having an effect that simple.
Yeah. People maybe, I don't know if back in the day if they would think something like this was like cheaper or whatever now, but I mean, looking about it or watching it now, it just feels so refreshing to actually see like people on sets and actually having like just like stuff designed, versus like just watching whatever some modern movie that's just all green screen, or it's people barely interacting with anything. Like this, it actually was cool to like, like it looks like they're actually in a castle or a laboratory or whatever.
I would say they do look like sets. I will say that it doesn't look super realistic, but but they're fun sets. Yeah, they look good.
Yeah. I mean, just in a way though, I just prefer that to. It's kind of like a lot of the boring blandness that you get with, like green screen stuff nowadays.
Yeah, that's fair.
But overall, I thought it was a pretty easy breezy watch. It's short, but it's fun. And I don't know if you're a diehard of the poem, I don't know if this is what you really want from an adaptation, but like, I don't know. I thought it was fun.
The poem definitely sounds a lot more serious than this movie presents itself as. Yeah, I would say I like it. I don't love it. I think it's very much a Sunday afternoon type movie where you can put it on and not pay 100% attention, just kind of enjoy the vibes, enjoy the actors, and just leave it at that.
Put it.
Because I do think if you're paying like uber attention and you're following the story, it is actually so simplistic to a point where it kind of feels like it should have been like a 45-minute episode of like an anthology TV show or something like that, where it's been stretched out to the 85 minutes. And because it does the thing that a lot of these types of movies do, where there's a couple of there's some chunks in the middle or sort of late middle where there's just characters running to and from different bedrooms, and characters are just kind of like accepting and agreeing to things very quickly. There's very little conflict with a lot of the characters, and it's something that this is like a blanket old movie problem. A lot of old sci-fi has this problem as well. A lot of old horror movies have this problem. But it's something as simple as like someone rushing into Vincent Price's bedroom and saying, "Hey, this place is dangerous. We have to go right now." And Vincent Price just going, "Very well then," and just grabbing his coat. And like, he's not going to ask a question. They're just, you know, like ask for some elaboration on that. So just little things like that make it feel like a very old-timey movie, which isn't necessarily a bad thing if you like that type of thing. But the plot's pretty simplistic. It's, its big climax is very silly. It's very goofy. But it's basically a movie that's saved, and that sounds a bit harsh, I suppose, but it is all about just, you've got these great actors just, and Jack Nicholson in many ways, like, he's not really Jack Nicholson yet, like, he's not the Jack Nicholson from One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest or various other big heavy-hitting movies where he's really dramatic
Shining,
and funny.
obviously.
Shining, to go with a horror movie. It really is Vincent Price just being Vincent Price, this kind of aloof sorcerer who's doesn't really want to interact with anyone. Peter Lorre being this sort of bumbling, cowardly character who honestly he reminded me a lot of like what do you call it from Dracula?
Renfield?
A Renfield, yeah. He's got a lot of Renfield vibe to him, but with a bit more of an attitude. He's like a Renfield who rebel the entire time. Yeah. And then Boris Karloff he's just enjoying saying the dialogue. You can tell he's having fun just waxing lyrically as he's talking about everything and, sit down, let's have a feast, let's not leave in such dire terms, blah, blah, blah. So
I'm probably just happy to like not really have tons of makeup applied.
Yeah. So I would describe it as a very pleasant and easy to watch movie that is never going to like be memorable for the plot or anything that it's saying or have any good scary moments. It's just a vibes movie, I would say, more than anything.
Good way to put it, yeah.
So there you go. That's my general feelings. But yeah. Spoilers, I got. I don't know. Is there anything else we want to talk about?
No, I mean, yeah, it's. I guess spoiler warning for the episode, but it probably won't be a super long one.
I don't think so. Well, it feels quicker than normal to get to spoilers, but I think that's only because I did the cast roll call before I did the what did you think of it. Usually I do that after we do the what did you think of it, so it feels like we're getting to spoilers super quick this time, but it's only because I've already done this part that I normally do here. Okay, spoilers for The Raven, you've been warned. We'll go through the movie film. I do want to point out that when the movie starts, I don't know if it's before or after the poem recital by Vincent Price, and Vincent Price has got a great voice for a poem, right? That's that sounds good.
Yeah.
And he does the reading whilst it's like they've basically done some effect where they've mixed like high color like liquids together, so there's this sort of like almost psychedelic kind of background and like just like a raven silhouette. You dig it. Very good. Yeah, you said that. That's exactly what a hippie would say, Tim. Very good. But I will point out, though, one of the cost-saving measures that he did here for a couple of these establishing shots is that the first shot of like the castle that Vincent Price lives in, or palace, or mansion, whatever you want to call it, it's clearly a still frame that's paused because like the grain's not moving in the film, so it stands out. Right? Maybe this is something that not everyone would notice, but I always notice when they do this. Whenever a movie tries to cheat, it's like, oh, we don't have this shot, so we're just going to like have a freeze frame instead. I'm like, I can tell it's frozen, right? I can tell. Anyway,
how dare they?
It's not a big deal. Anyway, it just so happens that Vincent Price is using his magic finger to draw a pink raven in midair and just feeling good about it. I say it just happens because it's a bit coincidental that what happens next is that a raven shows up.
Yeah.
And says, hello, help me. Not immediately, he interacts with his daughter a little bit first. But I think, do we get the scene where he's at like the ex-wife's or the dead wife's like coffin, and he's like, oh, I long for my beloved. Oh, I'm still sad because she's dead.
I don't think so, because I mean I could be wrong, but I feel like the raven comes in pretty quickly.
I think because I feel like he talks to the daughter before the Raven comes in, but I could be wrong. It doesn't really matter all things considered. But we get interested in the fact that he's got a daughter, that his wife is dead. Notably, this was not her mother. This was a stepmom, so he's already went through at least 2 wives. is what we've learned here. And the reason why I think we meet the daughter first is because they do a whole thing where the Raven taps on the window and he thinks it's the door, and he says, "Come in,"
right.
And then he goes up to the door and he's like, "Wait, no one's here." And then eventually, like, he goes over to the window, the Raven's there, he lets it in, and he basically speaks for like 30 seconds before the Raven says something like, "Ah, will you shut up already?"
Which I think is basically like how the poem goes, because it's been a while since I've like read it or listened to it or whatever. But I think, generally what the poem is like him lamenting his dead wife and then kind of being taunted by this Raven who I think at first he like hears knocking and then no one's there, and then a Raven either flies in or he opens the door and it flies in, and then kind of like he feels like the Raven is mocking him. So all this stuff feels very in line with the poem.
Other than the drawing of the Raven with the magic before he comes in.
Yeah, I don't believe that Poe mentioned that.
Yeah. So basically what they do is they do the main idea of the poem in the first like couple of scenes, and then they just leave the ending where he gets the Raven to shut up until the very end. That comes back around to the end.
Which it's so funny because I feel like I do like this movie, but I feel like this would be the kind of thing that we would really rag on, like a movie if they did something like this today. Like if someone was like, we're adapting this like 30-second commercial and making a whole movie out of it, and we're taking this thing that's really serious and we're gonna make it like really goofy. Like I feel like that's the kind of thing today that we'd be like, oh God, this is such like stupid Hollywood studio stuff to not understand the intent of the source material and to just like have this really like dumb goofy take or whatever. But I don't know. I didn't mind it in this movie.
I think part of it's just that we have a lower expectation, I guess, or maybe there's a certain expectation of what this type of movie is from this time period, and I think we don't go in expecting, because a lot of movies like this, especially like genre movies, still had these kind of basic characters who weren't that grounded or realistic. I mean, some horror movies had done it because Psycho already existed in 1960, but that was very rare, and that was like a very new, like groundbreaking movie. But you flash forward to today, and the goal, even if they don't succeed, and a lot of movies don't succeed, but the goal is typically to have characters who feel like they're real people, that they bicker the way that real people would bicker, they question things the way that real people would question them. Whereas characters in movies like this from this time period, they don't act like real people. They never feel like real people. And that's okay, but you go in with that expectation. So I think that's part of why, at least for us in the present day, going back to a movie like this, we don't care that it's not this like faithful mood piece that matches the poem, I guess.
That's fair.
Yeah, that's I think so anyway. I don't know. So regardless, so the Raven comes in and explains that he is actually a magician or a wizard himself, and that he needs his help because another wizard, or essentially sorcerer, has turned him into a Raven. He's an alcoholic. He got drunk and he challenged this other sorcerer to a duel, and the other sorcerer just waved his hand and turned him into a Raven. That's Dr. Scarabus as the villainous sorcerer that we're hearing about here.
I can't remember all the names off the top of my head, but they all had like pretty cool wizard names, I thought. Yeah,
Vincent Price was Craven.
It's not bad. That's pretty cool.
Which, given the fact the movie's called The Raven, I thought it was a bit close, so maybe shooting a look there. Bedloe was Peter Lorre's character. The dead wife, who, we're going to see later, so that's why we're bringing her up. Lenore. Yeah. Estelle is the daughter, and then Rexford is Jack Nicholson's character.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. All right.
And what was Karloff's name again? Is it Scarabus or something?
There's Scarabus.
Scarabus. That's a cool name. I like that.
It almost feels like it's close to Scarab, and I wonder if that was an intentional, like, hey, he was the mummy kind of. kind of thing. They were going for something there.
Yeah.
I don't know. But regardless, the Raven explains, and this is Bedlow, right? Bedlow's been turned into a Raven. He's like, hey, well, first of all, he doesn't want any milk. He wants booze, which Vincent Price like gives him some, and he wets his beak. But he is like, hey, we need these things to turn me back into a human, and he lists a bunch of weird ingredients that, you know, it's like standard witchcraft ingredients of like, hair of a sad horse, things like that. Really specific stuff. And he's like, we don't have that in the house. What are you talking about? He's like, oh, actually, you know what? My father was a great sorcerer. In fact, we find out here between these conversations that Vincent Price's father was the head of the Brotherhood, right? The Sorcery Brotherhood that they were a part in. And Scarabus was in that as well. And they were like rivals. So that's why Vincent Price is kind of a hermit with his magic, where he doesn't really go out and use it with anyone else. He just keeps it to himself to just stay out of all that thing. Here's a question, Tim, I've got for you.
Okay.
Why is it in this world it seems really common to keep coffins with your dead loved ones in your house? Because he's got two in his house. He's got his dead wife on like an altar in the main kind of area, and then he's got his dad in a coffin in the family crypt downstairs in sort of a basement-y looking area.
I mean, you didn't have as much entertainment back in the day, so I guess these would kind of be like the things you would invite people over and take a look at, and you know, have a little dinner party and whatnot.
Because he says his dad's been dead for over 20 years. And then, the coffin's just still sitting out on a table. It's like, here, let's go look at my dad. Like, what? Okay. Fair enough.
No, I'm not sure if I'm forgetting something or if maybe I missed something, but, like, from this opening scene, it makes him seem, like, very, like, he's, like, a very reluctant magician. Like,
Yeah.
But then by the end, it's like he's like this badass, powerful magician that can like challenge this, you know, uber sorcerer. And I don't know, I forget. Like, did I miss something? Like, did he reveal like, oh no, I'm actually like super badass? Or
I don't think so. Because obviously when the Raven's explaining to him how to do this spell, and he doesn't really seem to know any of this stuff. And then later on, obviously, he's very good, and it turns out that he can just wave his hand and do magic, like the bad guy can. It does kind of feel like, okay, he's actually naturally very skilled. Maybe he doesn't know about incantations because he's not been doing that. Because, I mean, clearly he's not been down in that laboratory in a long time because it's covered in cobwebs. So maybe he's intentionally stayed away from it to a point. And it's only because he has to protect people he cares about at the end that he just says, you know what? We're going full duel here. I've got the powers of a proper wizard, and we're going to battle this out. But yeah, no, I don't think you missed anything because I didn't notice, like, because like you said at the start, it feels like, oh, he's like dabbling and he doesn't seem to know about any of this stuff that the Raven's bringing up. But then of course he's actually got a lot of big power by the end.
I mean, I hate to say it, but he might be a little bit of a Mary Sue.
I mean, yeah, maybe a little bit.
Now, I hate to tangent or to go off topic, but something occurred to me when you mentioned cobwebs. It's, oh, actually no, okay. All right, so I feel like there's only like webs and corn are really the only things on cobs, right? Like there's cobwebs, there's corn on the cob.
Mm-hmm.
And like that's it. when it comes to cobs, really. I guess it's like corn cob pipes, but that I feel like that's kind of tied into corn on the cob, right? I don't know.
Okay, I've just googled define cob to give you an answer to your query. Okay. All right. Here we go. Noun, meaning 1, the central cylindrical woody part of the maize, ear to which the grains are attached. That's where your corn on the cob comes from there, right?
Okay.
That makes sense. But there is a cob and other types of wheat, perhaps, and other types of grains. Apparently, it's British to say it's a loaf of bread, or a round loaf of bread.
Oh, yeah, I've heard that.
Well, I have. That's a surprise to me. But yeah, nothing here about a cobweb. It's very possible, Tim, that the cob and cobweb is not like two separate words that they've put together, and that it's just one word, start to finish, and the web is just short for cobweb, possibly.
Wow. It's so fascinating that, with just a few clicks of the keys, you can find, the answer to your question. Like, to us, it's very commonplace, but to like someone from back in the day, that would almost seem like magic, what you just did.
Is that you try to bring it back round? Okay, I've also Googled something else for you, Tim.
Okay.
The cob and cobweb comes from the abbreviation of a word that meant spider. But from a stricter analysis of the roots, cobweb is more accurately headweb, or perhaps, for fans of Spider-Man, webhead.
Interesting. Okay. Is that also where Oswald Cobblepot got his name too?
No, cobble's a different word, Tim. You cobble things together. That was from the Saturday Evening Post, the Halloween-related article from 2020 that I just read that from.
Okay, cool. Hopefully, this tangent will...
I just hate that there's several Google results of people asking the question you just asked me. There's one that says, who put the cob in cobweb? One that says, what does the cob and cobweb mean? One from Reddit that says, today I learned that cob and cobweb is actually an old and forgotten ... I've not clicked on it, but okay. See, you're not the only one. There's dozens of you. Dozens.
Hopefully this tangent will make it into the best of reel at the end of the year.
I'm not doing a best of. If someone else wants to edit a best of reel of tangents for the whole year, then they're welcome to give it a go and send me the file.
Did you hear that, Connor? or should I say Copper?
He's not going to do any work. You kidding me? Have you met the man? All right. What were we talking about? All right. So yeah, the laboratory setting, which they go down looking for the ingredients, and it is kind of amazing how much Vincent Price's character Craven just kind of like he just keeps agreeing to things. Like when the Raven asks for these things, he's like, you know what? Maybe there is some downstairs in that laboratory my dad worked in. Let's go down and check it. So they go down and check it. He's very, very just sort of nonchalant about the whole thing. But they find a bunch of ingredients.
Yeah, usually, you'd think when the Raven started talking, he would say like, "Holy shit!"
I know.
Or something.
He's so calm about it. He does not react. I guess Raven's talking's not surprising in this world he inhabits. Maybe he's met some other talking animals in his time.
I mean, maybe like it was because he was just talking about ravens and just was drawing like a magic raven with his finger. What's funny is it didn't really occur to me until you mentioned that, but I kind of assumed that opening scene was just like he was just kind of like playing with his finger, and then I didn't think that he was actually like drawing something in the space of the movie that we could see, because I at that time I didn't think he was a magician. Like I thought it was just kind of something like an effect for the audience or whatever. But now that we know, like, oh no, he can do that stuff, I was like, oh, I guess he was actually doing that.
Yes, he's an illusionist, not a magician.
Of course. I'm sorry. Yes.
A magician does tricks like a whore for money.
Yeah. He's getting all your quotes today.
That's 2 Arrested Development quotes I've got so far. I'm proud of myself. So they look for a bunch of ingredients. There's a couple of funny ones that they don't use, which they mention. But he makes it, and I was thinking, oh, this is not going to work, and the whole movie's going to be about fixing him into a human again. No, that's not it. It works kind of pretty well immediately, although not completely, because his head turns back into a human, but he realizes that he's still got like wings as arms, and he's like, well, you screwed it up. And he's like, hey, this was your recipe. You're like, so it's all very amusing, especially we need to make some more. And I thought, okay, they don't have any more ingredients, they're going to have to go looking. But then it just turned out, oh, we need a dead man's hair. Oh, my dead dad's in the crypt downstairs, so we'll just go and get that. which
There's a really good. Oh, sorry.
I'm gonna go.
There's a really good like line delivery where they're like, "Oh yeah, we'll just make some more," and then like he goes to open up the little container or whatever that had the dead man's hair, and he like Vincent Price just looks down and he's like, "Ooh, we're out of dead man's hair." Like just like the way he says it's just like, someone that just ran out of like sugar or whatever.
Yeah, and even the debate, because Bedlow's like, "Oh, we have to go to the cemetery." He's like, "Why are we going to the cemetery?" Because that's where the dead man's hair is going to be. We'll get some shovels and we'll get a dead man's hair, and that's the debate they have before he's like, "Oh no, my dad's downstairs." I'm sure he won't mind given the circumstances. It's for a good cause and all that. But when they go down the crypt, speaking of things where no one seems to react appropriately to what happens, there's a moment where the dead dad comes to life just for a second to give an ominous warning where he's like, "Beware." And it's like, and he just goes back to being dead. And I'm like, is no one going to talk about how insane it is that the dead man just came back to life to whisper a warning? Not only did they not really talk about it much, it feels like after a minute they don't even like heed the warning. Like it's just forgotten about.
I mean, my only reasoning was like maybe since his dad is there, maybe he goes down there a lot and like. They'll have like chats or something. Like, maybe it's not that
I hate to burst the bubble, but I'm pretty sure he says in this scene that he doesn't come down here much.
Oh, okay. Well, then F this movie. I mean, if I do agree, it is like very strange. I guess if you did want to be very like, if you need a reasoning for it, you could probably say like, oh, well, these are, wizards and magicians who are versed in magic, and this kind of stuff doesn't faze them. But I mean, that feels like not a good answer.
Yeah, at the very least it feels like he should be concerned about what he was being warned about.
Yeah. or like the fact that the audience is like new to this world, like there should be some type of like I don't know, justification for us or whatever, because we don't know what the hell's going on.
Of course. And I was shocked to find that it just cut to, they've made another batch of the potion and it's already worked. He's just human now. And I'm like, that's so weird. I thought there was going to be more of a build-up to that, but okay, he's just a human now, and he's asking for a cloak, and he's asking for clothes, and he's being very critical about it, and everything Vincent Price gives him is too big for him, and whatever. It's a whole thing. But the big inciting thing here, because he wants to go back to his boss, basically, right? That Scarabaeus, because he worked for Scarabaeus. But then he got into a fight with him and he got turned into a raven. He wants to go back because he wants to get his bag of magic tools, right? Which I guess is a wand, a hat, a bunny, some handkerchiefs. I don't know what else is in there. But he wants to go back and get his stuff. But he happens to mention when he sees a photograph of the dead wife, he's like, hey, you must have like divorced her then. And he's like, no, don't be silly. He's like, wait, well, what happened then? Because why are you not together? And obviously he's like, well, she's dead. He's like, no, she's not. I saw her today. she's with Scarabaeus. She's in his castle. And he's like, oh, you must be mistaken. But this immediately makes Vincent Price go, I have to go with you. And like find out if he starts assuming that he must have like raised her dead soul, and her dead soul is trapped at Scarabaeus' castle, and he just kind of accepts that as fact, gets his hat and coat on, and he's like, okay, let's go. And he gets his butler, who I thought the first time he said the butler's name, I thought he said Krang, and I was getting so ready to make a bunch of Ninja Turtles jokes, but it's actually Grimes. Somehow I misheard it. I'm disappointed. I thought it was Krang.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. I'll get over it. It's a thing.
Wait, I mean, you can still do plenty of Kraven the Hunter jokes.
I don't know anything about Kraven the Hunter.
Oh, I mean, you will this winter.
I can assure you I will not. I will not be seeing that movie, thank you very much, Timothy.
We'll see.
You don't get a say. It's not a horror movie. You can't make me go see it.
I mean, if like there's one patron that was like, I'll give you $3, you would do it.
Try 300. That's my asking price.
Oh, you gotten so classy, huh?
I know what my time's worth, damn it. Anyway, so there's a whole thing here where the daughter catches them trying to leave, right? And like very quickly is, oh, by the way, this guy here that you don't know who's in the house, this is what's his name, Bedlow. This is Adolphus Bedlow, and he's like, oh, Shantae, my dear, blah blah blah, right? And a lot of very quick things happen here, very, very suddenly. One, the butler Grimes just turns into an axe-wielding maniac for seemingly no reason. Vincent Price goes to open the door, and the door like slams him in the face, and it looks pretty fake. It's very much like Vincent Price is just acting here, so he just kind of like pretends to hit off the door. And he falls down, and for some reason this makes him smile, like he's in a daze, like, oh, that was a good hit. That was, you know, I love a good whack to the face, me.
I feel like that's like a very like cartoony effect, like someone gets hit in the frying pan and then they have like a goofy smile and fall asleep, you know, like.
I thought there was more to that sentence, Tim.
No.
It sounded like you were going to give another example, like, you know, more like
I don't know, piano falls on your head.
Oh dear. So there's a whole thing here where the butlers like try to swing axes at them, and eventually I think it's Vincent Price wakes up and uses some magic to put him down. Not kill him, just knock him out.
He basically just points his finger and has like little like green dots, like kind of like pew pew pew.
Yeah, it's like a little cartoon effect. But immediately the butler's like, I don't know what happened, sir. Like, he has no memory. He doesn't know what he was doing. It's like something took over his mind for a minute and tried to kill everyone. So that's set up for a bit later.
It's so funny just to look at like the differences between like, you know, movies back then and movies today, because I'm sure if they did this today, there'd be like this huge like action scene where the guy's like jumping off walls and like, you know, throwing the axe, and like, you know, the guy's jumping out of the way and whatever. And like this, like so much of it was just him with the axe being like kind of just going like back and forth, and like the other guy just being like 10 feet away being like, oh no. Like, that was funny.
Yeah, it almost felt like they were ad-libbing it. Like, they didn't actually plan it. Sure. It's like, we'll just do the typical stuff when someone's scared of another person with an axe. Just mime it out like an old Star Trek episode. And then the other thing that happens here is the introduction of Jack Nicholson's character is just out of nowhere and so sudden. They just go to open the door again, and young Jack Nicholson's standing there, and there's a bit of a scream, and then Bedlow says, oh, this is my son. Okay. I guess your son knew where you went as the Raven. Did you tell your son you were coming here in the hopes to find like this other sorcerer to like make a potion to get you back to being human? I guess he did.
It wouldn't seem like so like weird if characters, if they would act more surprised or make a big deal about it and stuff, but everything is handled like very like nonchalantly. It's just like, oh yeah, okay, like this is happening now. All right, let's go. Yeah,
everyone basically just shrugs and goes, oh, okay, yeah, I guess that's what's happening now. Yeah, okay. And I feel like they try to tease there might be a romance between Jack Nicholson's character and the daughter, right? Because she wants to ride up front in the carriage with him because he's going to be driving. And it's like, oh, it's because she thinks, oh, handsome young man, I'm going to go and snuggle up to him. And I swear they do nothing with that the rest of the movie.
Yeah, I mean, I felt some sparks between them, but yeah, it doesn't really go anywhere. I do feel like the female characters, like I think the actresses did a good job and everything, but I do feel like the movie doesn't really give them much to play with.
I mean,
just kind of like
Lenore gets more because she turns out to be evil and all that, and she gets to sort of act a little bit more than the daughter. Though is just the typical good daughter who's concerned about everything, and that's it. That's all she is.
I mean, I really think like nothing about the movie would change if she wasn't in it.
Yeah. I mean, other than the fact that at one point they're threatening to hurt her to make him talk, that adds a bit of tension, I guess. But that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you could literally otherwise just cut her out, and nothing of value would really be lost. And to be honest, you could mostly count out Jack Nicholson as well, if I'm really thinking about
that's
it.
true. Yeah.
Right, not much really happened. And if anything, him sneaking around in the castle and talking to her and then talking to Vincent Price and running around, going to bedroom, it takes away screen time where Vincent Price's character is literally just having a nap at the middle of the movie, and he's kind of the main character, so it feels like we just don't do a whole lot for like 15 minutes in the middle. But hey. So they ride to the castle and they do a whole thing where to see Scarabaeus specifically, right? And they do a whole thing here where it's very stormy, and the daughter is describing what happened to the butler, where his eyes went sort of glazed over and he just became violent and rabid. And as she's saying this, the same thing happens to Jack Nicholson, where he just like his eyes go kind of white and he starts like going really fast on the carriage. He gets the horses to move really fast, so it becomes a very dangerous ride. And it gets a bit bumpy, and that's about it. And then it just kind of goes away eventually.
Yeah, there's not much to it.
There's not much to it. Like nothing of consequence actually happens to it. That's why I would say it's not a great movie or even that good. It's kind of an easy watch, but the script doesn't actually. There's a lot of things like that where it didn't really matter that happened. It was just another example like The Butler. And if anything, when we find out why this happened, it's kind of weird and convoluted, because it turns out Scarabaeus wanted them to come to the castle, but he had nothing to... Because they assumed Scarabaeus was trying to kill them to stop them from coming, but Scarabaeus wants them there. He wants Vincent Price there to try and steal his magic. So it turns out the dead wife, who's also a sorcerer, basically figured out something was going on and did the mind control to try and kill the others, not knowing that her new kind of husband, Scarabaeus, wants them there. And I'm like, this is so all over the place with the logic here. It's like, okay, fair enough, I'll just accept it. I think all it really comes down to is they wanted a couple of scenes where they're technically in danger early on to give it some excitement. So this is what they came up with. But between the fact that the reason for it happening is a little bit off and doesn't really track what the villain's actually trying to do, and it's not like the fact that the ex-wife did this on her own never really turns into anything like a conflict with them, and then also given the fact that the second danger is that Jack Nicholson on the carriage, where it just makes the ride bumpy and like no one almost gets hurt even, it's kind of like nothing happened really. It's fine.
Yeah. It feels like a first draft kind of thing where you're like, all right, we'll put these scenes in and then we'll think of like a reason for them later on, and then they're just kind of like, don't really have anything better. We'll just leave it as is.
But regardless, they get to the castle, they go in, there's a nice long couple of shots of them just entering the big grand hall and looking around, and we get to take in the surroundings. The movie's shot in a anamorphic widescreen, so it's nice and wide and you get a good sense of the area and whatnot. But Boris Karloff does make his entrance. Obviously it's nice to see him, and he's kind of, everyone's hamming it up a little bit in a fun way, and he's no different. But basically he's like, oh, you're a human again. Yes, we get into a fight and he tried to kill me, so I turned him into a raven. But I have no quarrel with you. In fact, me and your dad weren't rivals. We were we weren't enemies at the very least. We had a sort of competitive relationship, but we didn't hate each other, or anything like that. And Vincent Price said, "Oh, that's funny, because I didn't get the impression you liked each other very much from my dad. But fair enough, if that's what you're telling me. I guess this is all a misunderstanding." And that's that. Also, a woman comes out who's kind of like his dead wife, but it's not actually his dead wife. So he's like, "Oh, this is who you saw, you dumb, henchman. This is not my wife. I came all this way out here thinking you'd done something to my dead wife, and it's not actually her." We find out in a minute the dead wife is here, and I assume she's just using magic here to mask her appearance and look different.
Yeah, it's like, this isn't Lenore. This is Denor.
Eleanor.
Very different. Eleanor.
Very different. Very completely different person. Right.
They got a similar similar ass, so maybe that's what you saw.
Why are you so obsessed with the asses today, Tim? A lot of ass talk coming from you.
It's just a very funny word.
Yeah. So anyway, Boris Karloff is super friendly, and he's like, "Oh, you came all this way, but that's not a big deal. Well, how about you rest? You know, the daughter's had a bit of a fright. Maybe we should, have her rest. Maybe let's have dinner. Let's have some food and wine to, leave on a nice pattern. So we're not leaving on this misunderstanding. We can sit and get to know each other and blah blah blah." And the whole time, Bedlow, sorry, Peter Lorre's character, the Raven / apprentice magician or whatever he is, he just keeps trying to pick a fight as he gets more drunk. He's like, I could have had you too. Give me my bag of magic tricks back. And eventually he does give him his suitcase of stuff back, but he's like adamant over and over again. And to the point where he eventually picks up a wand and starts trying to fight magically with Boris Karloff. And Boris Karloff's not entertaining it. Everyone's telling him to sit down, you're making a fool of himself. And then Boris Karloff waves his hand, and there's basically a lightning strike, and Bedlow disappears, and there's a pool of what looks like blood left behind. Although Vincent Price goes up afterwards and puts his finger in it and says it's raspberry jam or something like that. So it's like, okay, what's going on? I don't know. But there's a storm now, so you can't ride back tonight. Everyone should spend the night. Here's some bedrooms. Off you all go. And the only thing I've got to say to this segment of the movie, other than just enjoying Boris Karloff play off Vincent Price, which was fun to watch, is that Jack Nicholson's character does not react that much to the fact that his father seemingly just got vaporized in front of him and seems to be dead.
Yeah. I mean, maybe this is just commonplace. It's like, this morning he was a raven, now he's jam. It happens.
Now he's not dead, of course. We see him later, but as far as he knows right now, he's dead. And he just kind of stares at it. He doesn't look emotional. He doesn't have some sort of breakdown. He doesn't get angry and says, "What did you do to my father? I know he's a dick, but you didn't have to do that." He just doesn't say anything, right? And that's kind of it. And then next time we see him, he's talking to what's her name, Estelle, the daughter, and he's just saying, "Hey, I think there's something fishy here. Something's not quite right.
You think?
I'm going to go speak to your father, so I'm going to have to climb outside the castle walls." And we get a whole scene of him climbing around, and it's whatever. Nothing really comes of it, other than the fact that he runs into his father, who's in a room downstairs. He's completely fine, and the reveal is that his father has been working for Scarabaeus the whole time. His job was to lure Vincent Price here because Scarabaeus wants to steal his magic. Now, I'm going to critique something here, Tim.
Oh my.
They keep saying he wants to steal Vincent Price's magic because Vincent Price has the gift of just using his hands to do magic. He doesn't need any instruments, he doesn't need anything else. But Scarabaeus can also do that. So I don't think the movie sets up exactly what he's going to get from Vincent Price, or how, is it just a power level? Is he just going to take in his magic energy and he'll have 14 magic energy instead of 12? Is that how this works?
Yeah. It's like an RPG. The more powerful enemy you defeat, the more experience you get.
Is that simple? All right.
I mean, yeah, it's weird. I mean, it could also, you could just kind of keep it as, oh, he's just trying to get revenge on his dad because he hated his dad so much. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either. But here there's a lot of different scenes here that just kind of jump around. We see Scarabaeus talking to Lenore, the dead wife, and she's like, "Aha! I convinced him I'm dead. Haha! I was watching him at the window. Blah blah blah." But it seems like these two have kind of a weird relationship where, oh, we're a couple because you're more powerful than he was, and I've decided to be with you because of that. But if you ever lose that power or all your money, then I'm gone, kind of thing. So it's not like a romantic love between them. It's very much a strategical, this gives me a better life, I guess, and that's it. but she's definitely evil. Like she's chewing the scenery the entire time.
Yeah. It's just very funny because, again, if you're thinking that, like, oh, this is like his object of affection from the poem, that, like, you know, when you go back to that original Edgar Allan Poe poem, it's just, you know, he speaks very eloquently about Lenore.
And the movie says that she actually faked her death and is an evil bitch.
Yeah, basically it's like she's just like, you know, I guess it's not the same as, like, you know, the typical, like, evil money grubbing woman. In this case, it's like the magic grubbing woman.
I mean, that's basically the same thing, but yeah, okay. Yeah, it's a weird direction to go in, but the funny thing is, though, is that the scenes with these two talking to each other, or the scenes with Karloff and Vincent Price talking to each other, are definitely when I was enjoying the movie the most, because they just all have good chemistry in the way they're bouncing backwards and forwards off each other. So, I
mean, like you said, they're all very, you know, great actors. You know, so.
They all have screen presence. Like, much like the sets, nothing comes across as real, but it's all good and entertaining in a sense. It's really hard to quantify sometimes, some of this stuff, but it's just nice to watch them work more than anything else. So, yeah, there's a lot of running around. Like, Jack Nicholson wants to run away with Estelle, but Estelle's like, no, I can't leave my dad. So they go get Vincent Price, and Vincent Price just accepts that it's dangerous and they have to leave, even though he was having a nap, and has no evidence to suggest why it's dangerous. The villains have been talking to Bedloe a bit more and saying, hey, we're going to do this now, blah, blah, blah. They're planning to torture Vincent Price to get him to, like, give up his power. So can Vincent Price just do that? Can he, like, just hold out his hands and transfer the power over? I don't know. I don't know how it works.
Yeah, I mean, they haven't done anything to establish any type of, like, rules of magic in this universe.
Oh, so. Not even remotely. And also, the villains just decide to turn on Bedloe and, like tie him up with a bunch of ropes magically. So he ends up being tied in the cell with all the others, because they all get captured. They all basically, when they try to run out the building, the front door turns to concrete because Boris Karloff snaps his fingers, and he's like, "Aha! Yes, you're all trapped now." Mahahaha. And Vincent Price like, "My Lenore, you're alive! How could you do this to me?" It's like, yeah, I faked my death. I put another body in that coffin, which, by the way, the fake body in the coffin at the start for her, it looked pretty bad. It was like paper mache or something like that. It looked pretty dodgy, I have to say. Yeah. It was not, unlike the dead dad who was in the crypt. It wasn't like an actor with makeup on. It was like a prop of some kind, and it did look pretty rough.
Yeah, I forgot to mention, but I thought the dad did look cool, and it's very, maybe like a little cheesy or cheap, but I thought there was like an aesthetic to it that was nice.
Yeah, cheap and cheesy.
Yeah,
cheap and cheesy. Yeah, that was fine.
That's how I like my nachos.
Fair enough. Cheap and cheesy. Yeah, so they're all tied up in a cell, and they're going to torture the daughter so Vincent Price will hand over his magic. And it ends up being the fact that Boris Karloff, because Bedloe keeps like saying, "Why are you doing this to me? Let me out." He keeps saying, "I deserve more than this. I helped you," and everyone finds out that he lured them here, right? And that he's behind all this. Boris Karloff rewards him by turning him back into a raven. Right, but that actually ends up leading to his downfall, because now he can peck through the rope that's tying up everyone else. So he pecks through the rope tying up Jack Nicholson, and that leads to everyone getting out. Which basically, I mean, there's not really much to say except for the fact that we get a duel. We get a sorcerer versus sorcerer duel where they both sit in chairs, and like it's simple little stuff. Like one will throw a magic blade at the other, and then Vincent Price will like make a sort of shield, like a blue circle of a shield, and it's very cartoony. It's like a solid blue circle, and the little knife's this red like shape as opposed to anything else. Yeah. There's a ball at one point moving around. It's just a blue circle, stuff like that.
Yeah. Like you said, like it reminds me of like very much of like like clip art or something that you would just kind of take and post on there. And I do gotta admit though, like I was getting a little bit of like Doctor Strange vibes, like when they would make like kind of like the magic circles and everything.
I think the first thing they do before they get to the duel itself, I think it's just when they first get out of the cells, there's kind of like a, you know, that thing where they're both firing beams, and it's kind of like, it's like they don't quite do the, you know, the Iceman and Pyro thing where it's going back and forwards, but they both have their own color, and it's kind of intermixing in the middle, and they're both like sort of like got their hands out and sort of holding it. So I mean, the whole thing's very goofy, and like they're really hamming it up and doing all this magic stuff, and then obviously eventually, like the bad guy makes Vincent Price's chair sink as if it's going to hell. But then Vincent Price just starts fluttering his hands like he's a bird, and the chair just starts flying. And I'm like, okay, all right.
I mean, maybe it didn't actually last as long as it did in my head, but it felt like this. And I'm not complaining because there was like fun stuff that was happening, but it feels like this duel went on forever for me. Like, because you're pretty close to the end of the movie at this point, and like I thought it'd be like, oh, okay, yeah, just like a few minutes or whatever, but it feels like it's quite a while.
Yeah, I think the thing that stuck out to me, other than just the actual, you know, duel that was happening, is how quiet it was. Like none of the other characters said anything they're just watching from the top of the stairs. It's so weird because a modern movie would absolutely cut back to them making little one-liners, or even like a movie from the 90s, I would imagine it cutting back to just seeing their reactions as if they're a crowd watching, and like, you know, they're like, oh no, he's done for, oh no, he's fighting back, or so, you know, like something. But it plays out just quietly for like 5 minutes. It's really kind of weird because even Vincent Price and Boris Karloff don't say anything. You know, it's not like they're shouting abracadabra or anything like that. They're just quietly going. And I will say it's probably like the most interesting choice they make for it, just to make it feel like, no, we don't need to say any words. We're going to let the magic do the talking, and we're just going to fire it back and forth.
One thing that stood out to me was I forget what it was. Like something wraps around his neck, and then like he turns into a snake. Yeah, well, I think he turns it into a snake first, and then Vincent Price turns it into just a bit of fabric, and he turns it into a bat and throws it back at him. It's like the original Batarang.
Yeah, and it's a very sort of like obvious toy bat as well. It's not. It doesn't look like a real bat.
Oh yeah, I was like, oh, we got a real snake. Do you think we should get a real bat too? It's like, no.
I guess a snake's easier to deal with than a bat.
Oh yeah, you can't train bats.
No.
Sorry,
I mean, Batman can train bats.
Yeah.
Come on. You know it to be true. No?
Okay.
All right.
I'll concede.
So anyway, Vincent Price wins. That's all I can really say. The place starts to crumble, and there's fire like spreading around everywhere, and the villains effectively get trapped and both die in this fire.
Even though Lenore tries to kind of weasel her way out of it, she's like, "No, baby, I swear I love you." Like, you know, he hypnotized me or something, but you know, Craven's too smart for that. He's like, "Nope, sorry, toots."
Why the Harley Quinn voice? I don't know. Oh dear. And you know the effects, the fire looked fine. Like, you know, there's like obviously the outside shots were more of a matte painting with like sort of smoke drawn onto it, but it was fine. So they do get out of Dodge, in fact, and I mean the movie kind of ends with in the room we started in, which is like the study at Vincent Price's place. And Bedloe as a raven is there saying, "Hey, we're going to like make more of that potion to put me back the way I was." And he's basically saying, I mean, you did like lure us out there. You kind of put us in the danger in the first place. He's like, "Yeah, I also saved everyone, so maybe we can leave it at that." And the movie kind of ends with him just saying, "Hey, shut your beak," and waves his hand so he can't speak, and then just turns to the camera and says, "Quote the Raven nevermore."
Yeah.
And then the movie is quite short, even at 85 minutes, because then there's a roll call style credits where you get the faces popping up, as the and amazingly Jack Nicholson's credited last, which is really funny in modern days. But hey, yeah, it's a fun movie, but I think it shows like how quickly we fired through that, because there's not like a ton to the plot. Like, there's not a lot of interesting things happening in the plot. The interesting stuff is, you know, the performances, which are very good and compelling. There is that period in the middle where Vincent Price goes for a nap and he's kind of missing for like 20 minutes, and that felt kind of weird. But there's also things like the great sets that are fun to look at. But, you know, once you've talked about them a little bit, you're done. Because, like, I mean, the movie does mostly play out. Like, once they get to Boris Karloff's castle, like, that's the setting for the rest of the movie, pretty much.
Yeah.
We never go anywhere else. So, it's pretty straightforward.
Yeah. I think, wasn't there, I forget exactly where it pops up, but I think there's, like, one other scene, too, where, like, the villains pop back up, like, they're like, hey, we're not dead yet or whatever, but then the Lenore is like, hey, like, can't you like use your magic or whatever? And he's like, I don't got any more magic.
Yeah, I guess. What? Yeah. I don't remember that, but sure.
I'm trying to think. I'm trying to think if it was like after, like, was it I don't know if it was like a post-credit scene or something, but there was like a little scene that popped up. I wonder if it was like right before the Raven part or something. I don't know.
I don't remember this. Maybe if it was a mid-credit scene, then I missed it, because I did turn it off as the credits were playing. So
could have possibly been.
Hey, Roger Corman was ahead of the game. He was, 40 plus years before Marvel started putting in mid-credit scenes everywhere.
Now, what would you do if this was like basically the plot of like the next Resident Evil game?
I'd be very upset, Tim. What are you talking about?
Imagine they're just like, oh yeah, the next game is going to be about like wizards and
No, I don't want it to be Immortals of Avium, Tim, to answer the question.
Don't really know what that means, but okay.
It was a first-person shooter from last year where you fire magic instead of guns.
Well, that's not like there was I feel like they did that before. I feel like there's a game on the 64 I played that was basically that. Was it called Hex? It was just like,
Oh, sure. I mean, they all have more than one. I mean, that was multiple I mean, you just said you played it on the Nintendo 64, Tim. You realize that console is 30 years old, right?
Well, I'm just saying, if this like Immortal Avion or whatever game, if they're trying to say like they're the first-person shooter with magic, then I don't think that's true.
I never said they said that. I never even implied it. You just assumed that. It just looked very bland more than anything else.
I'm sure it was.
Yes. Okay. I mean, that's actually what I add about the movie. Like, you know, it's a nice watch, but it's pretty simple. I'm not going to rate it super highly because I think it is just fine ultimately, but it's a pleasant fine.
But no, I mean, I was a little surprised. I mean, yeah, I agree. It's not like it became like my new favorite movie or anything, but I don't know. Like, I don't think I was expecting something that was going to be like as crazy, which I think kind of helped me for it. Like, I was like, oh wow, like this movie is going in a lot of places I didn't expect. Like, I kind of assumed it was just going to be, you know, Vincent Price lamenting about his dead wife for an hour and change, and then, you know, Raven, you know, flying around the room, which I mean, and also, you know, the Raven did a really good job too. It was very well trained.
We haven't mentioned that, but yeah, they had a real Raven pretty much the entire time, barring the silhouette, which was obviously just a drawing at the start. Like, it was just a real bird. I mean, maybe it wasn't technically a raven. I don't know birds well enough to spot the difference between a raven and a crow, but
yeah, I never really knew the difference. So they all seem pretty similar, but yeah,
they have a slightly different beak, I think.
All right, that sounds right. But no, like I was kind of actually pretty surprised, like, about how wild it ended up being. Like, oh yeah, I would not have guessed that this would have been about dueling wizards, which, you know, I mean, again, you know, it's not perfect, but yeah, I think it's like a fun enough watch to put on, and and like there's it's hard to take like the story very seriously, but it does feel like worth checking out for like the performances, and again if you just kind of like a throwback to like looking at these like very well put together like sets and everything. I thought it was a fun time.
Yeah, although between the movies we've done now of this ilk, I would say Fall the House of Ushers was the much better film. Like that actually had a fairly compelling story, from what I recall. So yeah, obviously we'll try some more of these over time. But I mean, maybe it'll be another 4 years. I don't know. But we'll get to the other stuff in the future. But Tim, what are you going to rate The Raven?
I think I'm gonna give it a 6.5, which is a pretty good score. I mean, again, I think it's just it's nice and short, so I feel like this wouldn't be something that you could really sustain for like a 2+ hour movie or whatever. But it's got really good performances. I think it looks really well, and it is like weird and goofy, but I kind of like that aspect of it. It kind of made it like a little charming for me. And kind of echo what you say. Like I think you put it well when you say like, oh, it's like a Sunday afternoon movie where you can just kind of throw on and it has vibes, and it doesn't overstay its welcome. So not like gonna put it like super high and say it's like a must watch or anything. But I think it's a fairly well done movie. It's happy that we checked it out.
Yeah, I think for me it's a 6. It's a fine film. It's a easy watch. It's pleasant. I don't think the story's particularly great. There's definitely moments when Jack Nicholson's just running about the castle where I just kind of feel it dragging. Like I almost think you could cut out about 15 to 20 minutes and make it like a tight 1 hour thing, which I get it isn't like long enough for a movie most of the time these days, or even the 60s for that matter. But yeah, it's still a pleasant watch. There's definitely better Vincent Price and Corman movies, but I think it's fun for what it is. So 6 out of 10 for me. So that is that. And then next week we're back to a modern movie, something that's getting a little bit of buzz. We'll be looking at Exuma, which is a foreign film that's been getting some praise in recent weeks. So we're looking forward to checking out that. But
just got put on Shudder I think a few weeks ago, so people that have that can check it out before they listen to the review.
So that is next episode, so look forward to that. And as I said at the start of the show, you can get a bonus episode, an exclusive episode every month on patreon.com/MailFuzzTV, where me and Tim will do something, usually something a bit sillier, something from the 80s or whatever. Last time we did Nightmare Beach, we've done Death Spa, we've done things of that ilk. Silly slasher movies tends to be a lot of what we do there. Not always, but often. It's still summer, so we'll be another summer themed exclusive episode in August, but we don't know what it will be quite yet. We have some choices. We're going to make our picks, but we're almost there. But yes, so you get that. Plus at the $5 and up tiers, we do the even more stream segments where we'll do like a random top 5, or we'll do maybe some discussion on a couple of trailers or something like that. Tim sometimes will make me play a dumb game that he's come up with, but it's just kind of sort of fun talking discussion segments as opposed to reviewing a movie that's horror related, and we try and do 1 or 2 of those every month as well. So you can check out that on Patreon or via YouTube memberships if that's more your thing. So that's the show. That's been Streams After Midnight. Thank you very much for joining us. We always appreciate it. Keep watching scary movies and quote The Raven, nevermore.